So I mentioned this previously, but it's very interesting that there is a very, should I say, unique possibility that we have more Buccaneers than we realize. Because right now, confirmed, we have Bartholomew Kuma and Bartholomew Clapp as Buccaneers. However, during the Kuma flashback, Alvita mentioned something very interesting about Kuma. She compares his size to Whitebeard's. And this is something I brought up in a previous video, but it's interesting that Kuma's hair takes the form of bear ears, and we learn in an SBS that that is just bear head. It has nothing to do with his abilities. Whitebeard is in a similar boat because his mustache has this crescent moon shape, which is also very interesting because now we have two characters of a similar size whose hair acts in a peculiar way and retains a particular shape. What's further more interesting about this is that the Japanese black bear has a white pattern on its chest that looks like a crescent moon. I'm not sure if that means anything, but it's also further more interesting when you consider that Whitebeard has been depicted as a polar bear before. That's not really his final animal representation. His final and true animal representation is the whale, and you can tell that by his ship, the Moby Dick. But it's interesting that they even chose to depict him as a bear in any capacity, right? So, with all of that being said, I could believe that Whitebeard is a Buccaneer, much like Kuma. They're both large, they're both renowned for their physical strength, and they both have a surprising amount of endurance because, if you recall, during Marine War, Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, was very, very unwell, yet and still he took on the entirety of the Marines. So that's just something interesting to consider. And when you look at Kuma, his body could undergo all of these procedures, and even when his will was extinguished, he still had enough to will himself back to the one he loved and summon up enough will to deliver a giant hockey punch into the face of his oppressor, which is something else that's kind of phenomenal when you really start to think about it. Another thing that should be considered is that both of them have a high value on the concept of family. As Bartholomew Kuma loved Guinea and he loved his adopted daughter Bonnie, and Whitebeard loved his crew. He called all of his crew sons, except of course Odin, whom he saw as a brother. So all of that is extraordinarily interesting when you start to compare and contrast one to the other. And I really do hope in the future, if they are half giants and they are related to giants, that sometime in Elbaf we get a big genealogy chart of how Buccaneers fit in the whole giant scheme of things. But with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede What's It.